It's that time of year in the offseason. Teams come calling, requesting to interview 49ers assistants in both the coaching staff and the front office. That is happening now with DeMeco Ryans and Adam Peters. What a run Brock Purdy is on into the playoffs, looking at some of his statistics to finish his rookie regular season and breaking down defensive backs on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks for making us your first listens here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com. Promo code Locked On. Here we go, Croc. This is what happens. The day after the season ends, a whole bunch of coaches get fired, and then those teams that fired their coaches and GMs pick up the phone and call the 49ers and ask for permission to speak to somebody. It's happened every single offseason for the last, 3-4 offseasons now for the 49ers, and luckily the Niners have been able to hold on to Adam Peters and Rand Carton, but the Tennessee Titans are the first team to call about some representatives of the 49ers front office. Adam Peters and Rand Carton, both high up lieutenants underneath John Lynch in the 49ers scouting department. Rand Carton on the pro scouting side, Adam Peters, assistant GM on the, and I don't even know what their titles have changed recently, and their pay has been changed accordingly recently.
I think Peters is the assistant to the GM.
Okay, Dwight Schrute style. He's on the college side basically, and Rand Carton on the pro scouting side is where they're is where they came up. And so both of them got interviews last year. Both of them are going to get interviews again. And many times it's the same team that's interviewing both of those guys. And this time it's the Tennessee Titans, the first team come calling. But look, every team that has a GM vacancy, every team that has a coach vacancy, I think you're going to get a call from the 49ers. And the Denver Broncos are the first team to call about Niners defensive coordinator DeMeco Ryans. Do you like the fit in Denver for DeMeco Ryans? I know our guy Alex Clancy is really all about DeMeco Ryans for the Arizona Cardinals. He doesn't want to retread there. He doesn't want anybody from inside the organization in Arizona. And look, Sean McVay might walk away. Is Pete Carroll going to retire after the 49ers beat him on Saturday, right? We're looking at the 49ers finished the season with opponents going 0-15 against them. And so we'll see if that carries over to next year. If the Cardinals lose in week 1 next year, the game after playing the San Francisco 49ers. But at some point, the 49ers are just like doing a number. They swept the division. Coaches are leaving, getting fired. Sean McVay wants no part of a rebuild. But again, it looks like the 49ers are going to get poached. Do you like a certain spot for DeMeco Ryans, or do you not want him in the division? I think is a better question.
Well, first, kudos to really, again, it starts with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan for being able to identify talent. And we talk about with the coaching staff, but I think when you look at this team, how they're built, they do a terrific job of identifying players that fit what they want to do, as well as front office guys, right? Who was it Mayhew that got the job as general manager in Washington, I believe it is, or where'd he go?
Yeah.
So,
Washington. Yep.
Yeah, this is, you talked about it every year. They go and they poach these guys. And for a while, it felt like this is a very well-ran organization, even though you weren't seeing quite the results of it, but you still could feel it. I think now you could say with confidence that these guys know what the hell they're doing, right? At the top.
And it's felt like so many interviews with, and I wonder if it'll be a package deal, one of these teams that has GM/head coach opening, you end up with DeMeco Ryans and Adam Peters or something like that, or Rand Carton. It feels like it's Adam Peters' turn. And he's kind of due for that GM job. And I know a lot of fans want to keep everybody around, and some fans are like, just pay DeMeco Ryans more. Of course, he wants to stay with the 49ers. I think he might want one of those 32 head coaching jobs this year, even though last year he was like, okay, I've only coached 1 year as a defense coordinator. I'm going to pull my name out of the hat with some of these jobs. There's a lot of jobs out there. You can probably find some good ones. And with the end of season the Broncos end of season might feel like they have a little bit of hope with how much better it looked after they fired their head coach. There might be like that Broncos job might look a little better with Russell Wilson than we thought it was going to the first 15 weeks or whatever of the NFL season. So that's an interesting one. I don't think it should worry the 49ers who the Cardinals end up hiring, even if it is DeMeco Ryans. But I think you nailed it. We've talked about it before on the show, and I think we're seeing it again with the restocking of the staff. And that might have been one of the underreported stories of the 49ers season earlier on in the year, because they lost a whole bunch of assistants and had a lot of new players and a lot of new coaches in new positions all the way down through the assistant ranks for the 49ers, even down to, the quality control guys. So Kyle Shanahan's ability to put together a coaching staff, identify and even, develop some coaches underneath him is clearly and maybe his biggest superpower as a head coach.
Definitely. He figures it out. And I think people throw this term around, but leader of men. And that he is. I think he does a terrific job doing that. Even if sometimes I don't quite understand the method to his madness, but the results are the results. And right now, you're talking about 2 straight years of being, looked at as a very legit team. Even last year, right, they backed into the playoffs. And everyone was like, 49ers, that's the team to watch. And they're viewed that way because of who they're coached by. So as it pertains to, guys going into the conference, the division, if DeMeco Ryans goes to Arizona, it is what it is, man. And you got to go out there. You got to handle it. 49ers to have the better team. If I am DeMeco, though, yeah, take me to the Denver Broncos. They have a lot of talent. And a guy like DeMeco, with, what he's done defensively, putting guys in positions to be successful, they got a talented defense there. It starts with Patrick Surtain and what he is, and just all over the place, Denver Broncos. A lot of talent, which is interesting because it's like, why do they suck? And I think it's, you got to look at Russell Wilson. It felt weird all year, and it's like that they can't be that bad. Like, no, they got to win. He can't be that bad. And is he just done? I'd say I want to go to a situation where there is a quarterback, and even if you can't make it work for the first year, maybe you kind of move on eventually. But right now, if I got Russell Wilson at quarterback and I have that defense, I feel a little bit more confident that I can turn this whole thing around.
One thing I would not want is to go to the Houston Texans, especially if they keep their GM, because I don't know what they're doing. The David Culley one and done last year, then Lovie Smith one and done this year. Lovie Smith out the door, winning that game and taking the number 1 pick away from the Houston Texans. It was a nice little parting gift from Lovie Smith. But like, what are you doing as an organization going one and done twice in a row? It didn't make sense. And it felt like the Lovie Smith hire was a stopgappy hire after firing David Culley the year before. Like, why not see it out with him? It was a really odd situation. And I don't know how they can hold on to their GM, because you got to look at the top of the organization and be like, what the hell are you guys doing? They still need a lot of talent. They have a lot of draft picks, but if I was a head coach, I'd probably look at the Houston Texans with a side eye right now. And it might be looking at some of the other jobs, even though it's a really nice situation as far as draft picks, blank slate to maybe take over. But I'd probably at least want to take my own GM with me if I was someone like DeMeco Ryans.
It's felt like now for a few years that their whole goal was to get McCown as their head coach, but they couldn't justify it before. He didn't have the coaching experience, and it's like, we can't do that. We can't do it. So they hired Culley. It never felt right. He got fired right away. They hired Lovie Smith. That whole situation, he was never set up to have any type of success. They fired him, and if they get McCown, I would not be surprised. Now, you talk about that, right? You talk about, it looks weird, firing coaches back to back. There is another organization that did that and has had some success, right? San Francisco 49ers. And it was very similar, right? Now, they got rid of Balky. And that's the key there that you're saying. Starts at the top. You got to clean the house. You don't want to play for that GM. But 49ers hired Tom Sula. It was a little weird. Hired from the inside, whatever. Boom, fired him. You're out of here. All right, bring in Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly was never in a position where he was going to be successful with the 49ers because of who the GM was. He didn't do anything for him. It was one of the worst rosters that I've ever seen the 49ers field. And really like Chip Kelly or like Lovie Smith, they won that last game. Remember, 49ers won that last game that made it to where they had the number 2 pick instead of the first overall pick where they could have had Myles Garrett.
Oh, and the opposite happened too with the Browns, who like fumbled away. They had, I think it was Isaiah Crowell, was that the name of the running back for the Browns?
Yeah.
He was scoring a touchdown, fumbled at the goal line, ball went through the end zone for a touchback, and then they fumbled another interception return. A guy was about to have a pick six on an interception return. He fumbled the ball. And it wasn't even on purpose. They should have won that game, and the Niners still should have had the number one pick. And then who knows the direction of how things would have ended up going. I mean, that's
Well, I think Myles Garrett's a little bit better than Solomon Thomas, right?
Yeah, but then maybe you don't. Maybe you're just good enough to not have Nick Bosa and be in the number 2 position in the draft the next year, right? Or 2 years later. And so there's a lot of different things that could have happened there.
Nick Bosa or Myles Garrett?
Nick Bosa, defensive player of the year right now. But if you would ask me in the past, I might have said Myles Garrett. I mean,
when's the last time you watched Myles Garrett?
Week 18.
Yeah, so I watched him yesterday.
Yeah,
and my just thought was, this dude's he's a freak.
He's a freak. Imagine having both of those guys though, if they still had the number 2 pick. Would they have gone Quinnen Williams or something like that? I mean, it's a butterfly effect. You never, one thing can change. One play, one guy fumbled the ball out of the end zone, and that changed the trajectory of who's going to pick 1 or 2. And we're seeing it this year with the Bears now and the Texans, and how that could change things and really set up the Chicago Bears, who have $100 million in salary cap now, the number 1 pick, which is probably going to be up for grabs because they got their quarterback. And
do they?
I mean, let me ask you this real quick. We got to move on to some other topics. You host Locked On NFL Draft. Make sure everybody subscribe up to Locked On NFL Draft daily. Just based on draft grades, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis, whichever quarterback is your favorite in the 2023 class, their grade on draft day won't be as good as any of the top 4 quarterbacks from 2021, including Justin Fields, right? That's the way I see it. Do you agree?
I could see a scenario where Bryce Young might have a higher grade than Trey Lance, who was young, and but then it's tough too because Trey got the size. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of give and take there, but just in the sense of being sold on Justin Fields and what I've seen from him so far, you could say, well, he's had to carry this team, bad situation, whatever, but he's definitely a far better runner as he is a quarterback that can efficiently run an offense throwing the ball. When you watch anybody who's watched the Bears out, he does not want to throw from the pocket. He doesn't want to throw with timing and rhythm. And that was an issue coming out of college where I felt like the most talented quarterback in that class. He was the most talented quarterback. 6'3", 230 pounds. He can run with the wind, 4'4". He can throw it as far as you need to. He has a big arm. He was probably the most accurate quarterback consistently in that class. Maybe you could go with Mac Jones, but I thought the distance he was throwing, I mean, it was
especially
most
with
talented quarterback.
Bigger throws, he was more accurate down the field for sure.
But he was not, he did not, what was it? It was he wasn't an anticipatory thrower. And right now that's carrying over to the NFL. And I think it's hard for him to efficiently just run a passing offense. And he's doing everything with his legs. So we see the splash plays and it's like, oh man, Justin Fields, he's so talented, he does this. And it's like, yeah, he's doing all of it because I don't know if he can throw it. I mean, I don't know if he can run an offense throwing the football. So if you see a guy like Bryce Young, do you say, you know what? Well, Ryan Poles, the GM, and the Eberflutz, that's not there. They didn't draft him.
That's right.
So I don't know. It could potentially get weird.
It could get weird. The other question becomes, okay, do you like Bryce Young so much that you would rather have Bryce Young or Justin Fields and another first-round pick and Will Anderson, maybe multiple picks from trading down, maybe trade down multiple times to get a bunch of players? You got to restock that roster. Part of the problem is the talent that's around Justin Fields. Justin Fields got better when he started running the ball more. His passing did get a little bit better, but it still needs to take another step. And so you have to look at the grades. How good do you think these guys are? CJ Stroud's another Ohio State quarterback, right? Is he going to be any different than Justin Fields coming into the league? And some other Ohio State quarterbacks, are they more raw than maybe you think? We've seen it with Alabama guys too, that it looks a lot better when you're playing with that much talent than when you get into the league and they might not have the size and everything you're looking for. So it's going to be fascinating with the NFL draft. But 49ers don't have any picks in the top 100 unless they do some deals. That's a subject for another day. We got to talk Brock Purdy, the quarterback. They do have playoffs, and maybe take a peek at some defensive backs, which have been in question by a lot of fans recently about the 49ers heading into the playoffs. Next. Daily fantasy made easy with Prize Picks. Prize Picks, how easy is it? Well, you can make an entry in less than 60 seconds and win up to 10 times your money on that entry. All you do is you pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on that entry. And you're not picking an entire team. Again, it's just 2 to 5 players. You go look at the projections available at Prize Picks, of which there are tons of NFL playoff projections, NBA every single day. This is daily fantasy. So we're talking about golf, college football, college basketball, women's hoops, tennis, NASCAR, MMA, boxing, you name it, you can find projections at Prize Picks. And you're not competing against other people. You're not building an entire roster. This is quick daily fantasy. You can play anytime you want. It's just you versus those projections available. Pick if the player is going to score more or less than their projection at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Croc, can you believe it's tax season already? Man, life moves fast. And you can go to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. That's the way I prefer to do my taxes, is to not do them. Let a professional do them for you. Meet with an expert who will do your taxes for you at TurboTax. TurboTax experts can relieve you from the stress of taxes and file for you so you can do not taxes. Show your eyes things that are not taxes. Unpack a moving box of not taxes. Taste not taxes. Sing not taxes a lullaby. Hope not taxes. Sleep through the night. Grab a saddle and ride not taxes into the sunset. With TurboTax 100% expert guarantee, an expert will do your taxes from start to finish so you can relax. Feels good to be done with your taxes, doesn't it? And I know Croc's taxes probably got a little bit more interesting this year as well with everything he's got going on. So go to TurboTax. Don't do your taxes. Visit TurboTax.com. Learn more. Intuit TurboTax, full service products only. Video meeting while expert does your taxes required. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. I mean, we got to have a lot of conversations in the offseason. My brain always goes to the draft, and I start looking at the Colts, who are at number 4. Then you start talking about that same thing we just talked about. What was your grade if you were a team versus the quarterback you have versus the 2021 draft versus who's available for you, trading up potentially. If the 49ers have a quarterback, maybe the 49ers are going to get phone calls about their quarterbacks, whether it's Trey Lance or Brock Purdy. They're going to be getting calls, right? And so I think this is going to be a really interesting draft season. Even though the 49ers don't have any top picks, they're going to be getting calls. There's going to be conversations as it pertains to 49ers quarterbacks in the future. Kind of got to put a pin in that. But I want to talk about Brock Purdy, that quarterback right now. How's that for a segue? And how about this? Brock Purdy. Since Brock Purdy became the starting quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers in Week 14, he leads the NFL. He is number 1 in the NFL. We're talking Patrick Mahomes. We're talking Jalen Hurts. We're talking Josh Allen. Name a quarterback. Brock Purdy is first in the NFL since he started playing for the San Francisco 49ers. First in quarterback passer rating with 119, which is a huge rating. First in passing touchdowns, 11. First in passing touchdowns per attempt, 8.9% of his passes go for touchdowns, which is first in the NFL. First in passing yards per attempt, 8.85, leads the NFL. And first in wins, tied for first in wins with a 5-0 undefeated record since being a starter. Brock Purdy has been awesome. I think we know, but we're kind of in the moment here covering the 49ers, Croc. But when we have a chance to stop and look back at what's going on, this is so unprecedented. No Mr. Irrelevant has ever completed a forward pass, let alone throw a touchdown, let alone win games, let alone go win playoff games potentially. That's the position that Brock Purdy's in right now. We've never seen anything like this.
And this is not to put down Jimmy Garoppolo.
Not at all.
But the 5-0 start that Jimmy Garoppolo had to his career with the 49ers and how people view that, what Brock Purdy is doing, he's actually doing how people view Jimmy, what he did. So his was it was 5-0, but it was very weird, right? It was like weird, and part of it could be the team wasn't nearly as good. The defense wasn't as good. The offense wasn't as good. So that could be part of it as well, right? But just how they perceive that, where it was just like, hey, man, he came in, he was cooking, and oh my gosh, 49ers were so good. Then you kind of go back and you look, and it's like, okay, he squeaked out some wins. Didn't even score a touchdown against Chicago. He threw 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions during that time, right? It wasn't like eye-popping. But however you thought or you think in your head Jimmy was during that run, like that's what Brock Purdy really is doing for the 49ers. This has been an extremely explosive offense. They're scoring a ton of points, even if it's not all the offense, but just in general. Like at the end of the game, 49ers are in the 30s, right? I mean, it's been awesome to watch, and we've been waiting on that. And someone from a different fan base tweeted me and was like, "Oh, Brock Purdy's going to come down to earth," and I responded. I said, we've been kind of waiting for that moment every game, and it just hasn't come. So you can keep assuming that that's going to happen. But right now, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. It just looks like this is who Brock Purdy is. He's doing what he's going to do throughout his career. He has a lot of weapons at his disposal that definitely help. He has Kyle Shanahan that helps. And so I assume that whatever version of Brock we're seeing right now is who we'll see in the playoffs.
I agree. I've gotten past the point of disbelief to believing in this young man, and I expect it now. And maybe that's wrong of me to do, but it's pretty awesome. And yeah, look, his weapons are so much better than what Jimmy G had. Who was Jimmy G throwing to in 2017, right? And
actually, man, he had Marquise Goodwin, man. What you mean?
They're actually, what's crazy is some of the numbers and some of the metrics with Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo this year isn't that different. But it looks different, and that's where statistics can lie a little bit. And Croc, you and I both, like we kind of look at things with a scouting eye, and we look at it first, and then statistics back up or don't back up what we see, and then you have to go back and watch it again, right? When you watch Brock Purdy play right now, and I've said this before, this is the best quarterback play Kyle Shanahan has had since he's been head coach of the 49ers, and it actually has made the 49ers better. And if Brock Purdy continues to play like he has, and he's proven to me that this is who he is, the 49ers actually have a better chance of winning the Super Bowl after being forced to go to their 7th round pick. And you look around the league, and Anthony Brown for the Baltimore Ravens, and we talked about Justin Fields and how he still has a lot of work to do as a passer, but you go to his backup, that's tanking by taking him out of the game, right? And you go look at David Blouse and all these other quarterbacks, you go to your 3rd string quarterback, you don't have a chance. The 49ers got better with their 3rd string quarterback. This is amazing.
Yeah, it's not supposed to happen the way that it is. And I think that's why you keep waiting for that down-to-earth moment. And it just hasn't happened. So now I'm like, okay, and almost like Dak Prescott as a rookie. Now, Dak Prescott, years later, all of a sudden, he just sucks, right? Like, I don't know what's going on with Dak right now. I've been one of his bigger advocates, just saying, hey, man, this guy's a good quarterback. And he led the NFL in interceptions this year. And he missed 5 games. Like, he has not been very good. He can still throw for a bunch of yards in the game, but he's not good right now. But I remember when he had that terrific rookie year, and a lot of people went back to the tech, like, well, what did we miss on Dak Prescott to where he ended up being a 4th round pick? Now, he did have a off-field issue heading into the draft, but it's like, well, what did we miss on the field to where this guy was a 4th round pick? And he started off as the 3rd string quarterback. And a lot of people forget this. Tony Romo ended up having an injury, and I think before Tony Romo got hurt, Kellen Moore got hurt. So it was Kellen Moore who was the 2nd string quarterback. Dak was the 3rd string quarterback. And because of those 2 guys going down, he ended up being able to get on the field, and then all of a sudden, he had one of the better rookie quarterback seasons that we've ever seen in NFL history. And when you look at what Purdy is doing right now, it's that same thing where I remember watching Dak thinking, oh, at some point he's going to come down to earth. And he just kept playing well. He didn't come down to earth until the following year when he lost Ezekiel Elliott. Some of the offensive linemen were out. I don't think he had Des Bryant in that 2nd year.
Yep.
And Witten was a year older. And then all of a sudden, it's like, you got to be the guy. And it's like, I'm not really the guy yet. And hopefully Purdy never has to deal with that, because I think it could potentially start to look a little weird as well. But right now, last pick in the draft, it's not supposed to look like this. It's just not. You're supposed to be done. Once you go to your backup quarterback, your chances typically, decrease I mean, just drastically. And right now, like you said, I think even going from whoever the first, Trey Lance to, it's almost like the 49ers odds kept getting better with the injuries to the quarterback. It's like, oh, you go from Trey Lance to Jimmy, I think your odds got a little bit better to win the Super Bowl or go to the Super Bowl. Then you go from Jimmy to Purdy, and I'd say after how he has played, your odds got a little bit better as well.
No doubt. The last part of his development might be like he needs to grow a beard or something, or like, I don't know. Like, I feel like he's got this, he's a rookie. You just came out of college and now you're going to be in the spotlight. I feel like he's a big offseason for Brock Purdy. He needs to not look like he's 17 years old when he comes back for a year or two as a quarterback. He just has, he's not the biggest guy. He's not imposing. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but you see him and you're like, you got to look like an adult more or something. I don't know what it is, but it's so funny because that the optics of it too, just looking at Brock Purdy, and that's probably a lot of the reason why he wasn't drafted higher than he was, is because you see the guy and you're like, oh, it's not a
no, that's not
in the room. You're not super impressed just by what he looks like. Like, that's gonna lead my franchise.
Well, there's still a couple notches of ability that I think he's missing.
Right. And part of it's size.
I mean, there's size. I was watching Baker Mayfield. He tried to make this throw downfield, and whether he was a tick late or whatever it was, when you don't have that big velocity power arm, a ball tends to hang. Now, he threw an interception that ended up making them lose the game.
Yeah.
And there are certain things that Brock Purdy will always is just don't attempt that throw. Get that you're just not gonna ever be that guy. And that's fine. You can win in other ways. And we watch guys like Drew Brees. Drew Brees won a lot of games. He's one of the greatest NFL quarterbacks. There's certain things, there's other guys. I mean, Cam Newton, right? There's certain things Cam Newton could do that Drew Brees couldn't. And I think you'd take Drew Brees' career over Cam Newton's, right? Like, so there's always going to be some things where there is a tick or two up that Brock, you just won't give you that. But I think what he's giving you right now, definitely with this roster, Kyle, and his ability is definitely more than enough to be where they are right now, which is one of the scariest teams entering the playoffs.
Drew Brees, not a bad comp for Brock Purdy, actually, now that you bring it up too, for what he's been
especially
doing.
The young Drew Brees, right? He moved around a little bit. And
Yeah. We got to move on to the defensive backs, Croc. Is there a problem there? Is there an issue going into the playoffs in the 49ers defensive backfield? We will talk to our defensive back expert, Eric Crocker, about that next. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis this season. Go to BetOnline.net and get informed before you make your bets at BetOnline. And I'm kind of surprised, maybe a little bit, maybe I shouldn't be, that the 49ers are actually favored to be the team that represents the NFC in the Super Bowl, even over the 1 seed Philadelphia Eagles, who are sitting at home with a bye and who would have a home field advantage over the 49ers in the NFC Championship if we're to be those two teams. And looking at the lines for BetOnline, 6.5 to 1 favorites, the exact Super Bowl matchup, rematch of 2019, San Francisco 49ers, Kansas City Chiefs is the highest odds to be the matchup in Super Bowl 56. You can find all of those lines and more at BetOnline, not just NFL, but any sport, NBA, of course, soccer and college bowl season. If you want to get a bet in real quick for the national championship game, anything you can find it, every sport, even Vegas casino games as well. Always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting information. Get over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more at BetOnline, where the game starts. So yesterday, Croc, we talked about Deommodore Lenoir, and he's definitely the guy that teams are picking on, and I'm sure it's going to be no different next week, Saturday, when the Seattle Seahawks play the 49ers. That one of the things they're going to try to do is trying to hit Deommodore Lenoir. We've seen some over-aggressiveness from Talanoa Hufanga in recent weeks. He looked really good. I think I didn't notice any of those things. I haven't rewatched the game yet, but didn't notice any of those things against the Cardinals. Tashawn Gibson seems to be everywhere and doing all the right things on the back end at free safety for the 49ers. He's been a really nice find as a street free agent late in camp. And then, of course, Charvarius Ward's been really good. Maybe he's not it's not Mooney Island, but he's been really good for the 49ers. He's been an awesome addition for the 49ers, and we're going to see a lot more of him and DK, and hopefully those guys can keep their cool and nobody gets kicked out of the game with how physical those guys are now going against each other for the third time this season, and there's no love lost there. But some fans have asked the question, Croc, like, is that where the weakness is on the 49ers defense that could prevent them from going to the Super Bowl?
No. I don't think that's what will prevent the 49ers from going to the Super Bowl. I think in most situations, there's some kind of defensive letdown because it's just too difficult to play defense in the NFL, especially playing in the second. I think right now the 49ers have shown the ability to, hey, we can give up a play because we're not as strong with Lenoir as we would be if we had Emmanuel Mosley out there, the guy who's actually supposed to be the starter, right? Or Hufanga giving up a play here and there and still holding the Miami Dolphins to, few points or whatever. Like, you can kind of work around that as long as your offense is scoring points. And I think that's the name of the game. Like, you have to, defense wins championships, but you have to outscore the opposing team. And if the 49ers keep scoring 30-plus points, then giving up 17 points because Lenoir gave up something or Hufanga had a mishap, but then you're tight, for the rest of the game, I think you'll be fine. There is a moment where it can bite you, but it will only bite you if the offense doesn't handle business. And I don't want to put it all on the offense, but I do think that Kyle has put a lot of pressure on the defense to be more perfect a lot of times. And now we're seeing like, oh man, they're scoring points in abundance. Thank you. And we're going to need you to keep doing that because there are going to be times where the defense isn't great. And we saw that against the Raiders. And I think a lot of people panicked. And I think they came back to earth in a good way, being themselves against the Cardinals. Even though you had the one play, outside of that, they were pretty shut down. And that's what they've been throughout most of this. I think what we've seen from the 49ers defense, that's who they've been. And how long ago was it that Emmanuel Mosley tore his ACL? What was it, week 4, week 5?
Yeah, something like that. He wasn't in there. I know he wasn't in there for the Chiefs game because they were really banged up in that game, which is one of the things you point to. Like, okay, well, they didn't have their full defense out there when they got the score run up on them against the Chiefs.
Well, since then they still had the number 1 defense in the league. Yep. So again, not saying that it's not a weakness or an area we would like it to be a strength, but it hasn't been that detrimental of just a big issue.
Right. You can go win a Super Bowl with that secondary.
Yeah.
Not a problem. Like, I agree. I think it's going to take, and I think you could probably say that about just about every position group on the San Francisco 49ers roster right now you can win a Super Bowl with this group. And you put that all together, that means you've got a really strong team top to bottom. And so
gotta go score. That's it. Go score. Move the ball.
Yeah, the whole complementary aspect of the 49ers. It's always been complementary football, run game, defense, and those margins for error were sometimes smaller, which I think that's grown. And you mentioned it with the offense. 49ers led the NFL at the end of the regular season in point differential this year. They've been been one of the biggest parts of this team is the quarterback play over the course of the 10-game win streak. And it goes back to Jimmy. And it goes back to Jimmy even when they were losing a couple games. Jimmy was playing pretty good football. And so once you raise that bar of offense and you're putting up more points, that helps the defense. The defense is already good. You're holding the ball more. So the complementary football equation changes a little bit. And I think it's even changed further in the 49ers' favor than what we've seen, say, last year in their playoff run, where it was complementary football, but it was such a tight margin. I think that margin's absolutely grown this year, which is why I like their chances better this year, even though they were hot going into the playoffs last year as well.
Yeah. Defense, I have a lot of confidence in them. I think they're fine. Would I like to have a better corner than Lenoir out there? Of course. I would like to have Emmanuel Mosley, a guy that they started the season with being the guy in the level that he was playing at. But you got to make do with what you have. And I think at some point, if it continues, and we saw this in 2019 with Emmanuel Mosley and Ahkello Witherspoon, where the playoffs started, what happened? Witherspoon got beat on that first drive. 49ers said, we're not dealing with this for this entire game. Yep. And they benched him and put in Mosley. And I could see something like that, kind of happening if what you kind of seem to be a trend. And again, we'll talk about Lenoir. It's been, I think the Raiders game was his worst game. And maybe the Washington game. And that's the tough part. You had your 2 worst games in recent weeks. The Cardinals game, he had a terrible play where he was actually in position, but it was just like, damn, AJ Green is bigger
and
than
it
me.
was like it was a flea flicker. And if you're
He
gonna
got pushed off 3 times in one play.
right, and if you're gonna point to him, it's like, okay, well, a guy who's 6'4" and is a borderline Hall of Famer that went over the top of you and you're 5'10" and caught a ball and you were in position even after a flea flicker and he pushed off on you. I mean, I'm not even dinging him that hard on that play. You hope he can make a play on that, and maybe that's what he needs to do early in a playoff game is take the ball away from the other team if they keep targeting him so heavily. And so that's one of the huge things for this 49ers team, and that's what one of the reasons they've been so good this year is turnover differential. And one of the things with Hufanga earlier on in the season when he earned himself a Pro Bowl bid is he was taking the ball away. He hasn't done that as much with some of his aggressive play, and then you get hit over the top because you're not in the right place. That's when it starts to be a problem. But if they can take the ball away, then that's one of that's even a bigger thing. And then it's like, okay, now what are you going to do? Because you're trying to go at our weakest links, and now we're taking the ball away from you. So I think a big play would go a long way to helping Deommodore Lenoir.
Yeah. Well, but let's say, because you said, that one play, you're not going to ding him because, just he didn't have an advantage in that situation. But let's ding him, right? Because it happened. Everybody saw it. It happened. It's a big play. It happened.
Mm-hmm.
What about the rest of the game?
Right.
So, I mean, how many times for the rest of the game did you say, damn, Lenoir? Like, wow. Like, oh, get him out of here. I reacted the same way everyone else did. It happened. I'm just like, man, it might be time. And people were like, it might be. Like, it's like, we'll see what happens. DeMeco Ryans said, no, we're going to stick with him. I'm not going to overreact like you, Eric Crocker, or the fans. And we're going to keep him out there. And to his credit, Lenoir played well the rest of the game. So it's like, hey, you had a bad play, and then you played red. So that's what you have to bank on during the season. Now, can people really target him? I would assume that if you have a Devontae Adams, that it will be trouble for Lenoir. I would say that Devontae Adams is trouble for most corners in the NFL.
Yeah. And they're going to keep coming after him. So we'll see. We'll have to keep monitoring it. And that Jack Rabbit Jenkins and Ambry Thomas, and they're going to be ready too. So you can go to that. And
not sure Ambry Thomas. I just saw something about he has a tweaked ankle or something like that.
He's still okay. You got a veteran. You can put out there.
Jack Rabbit makes plays too.
Yeah. Although I don't know if he's the same dude.
Correct. We were in college at the same time. He was at North Alabama. I was at UAM.
Oh, so he's old.
I actually was all conference, and he was like, you know what I'm saying? He wasn't on there. We were in the same conference.
So and he transferred?
Remember, he went to Florida.
Oh, he went to Florida.
From Florida
that's right. And then he got in trouble, then ended up going to...
Yeah, he was at a D2. He was at North Alabama.
There you go. There we go, Crocky. He probably watched a lot of Crocky film. Was like, how do I get...
He's like, man, I want to be like him.
I want to be all conference. And he's like, okay. And then he got to the league. All right, good stuff. Thanks, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen. Croc and I back tomorrow. A little bit of a season-end awards show on Winky Wednesday. Then we're going to be crossing it over, getting ready for playoff football with the 49ers and Seahawks in the wild card round. We've got you covered right here. Locked On 49ers.